Hello, welcome to day two of this week three course on incorporating daily routine as a important part of developing consciousness in this ConsciRise consciousness course. My name is Jonathan, and I'm grateful to be here with you today. Today, we're going to discuss more about the Ayurvedic approach to cultivating daily routine, what we call a Dinacharya, as well as focusing on the importance of diet and food in our daily routine as a way to cultivate good health and to enliven our consciousness. Thank you for being here. I want to start by introducing an important concept in Ayurveda that is kind of the foundation for this science of life and for the understandings, for the recommendations that we have. And that's the concept of the three doshas. Now, you may be wondering, what are these doshas? The three doshas are essentially these governing principles that Ayurveda recognizes, and they orchestrate all the laws of nature in the universe, and they orchestrate how our bodies work and how the environment works around us, and it impacts and influences how we interact with our environment. And so when I say laws of nature, a great example of what a law of nature is something like gravity, right? So we can't see gravity, but we know that gravity exists. We know that it is a force of nature because of the effect that it has, right? The ability to bring things inward, right? We can measure that. We can see the effects of that law of nature, but we don't see it, the law of nature itself, right? You can't see gravity. So the three doshas essentially operate the same way according to Ayurveda. So these three doshas, known as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are these governing principles that you don't see. You can't see what Vata looks like, or what Pitta looks like, or what Kapha looks like, but you can see the effects as well as the characteristics associated with each of these qualities. And so yesterday in day one, we talked about how Ayurveda is a science that allows us to align our behavior and our daily routine with the cycles of nature, and how there are these various different types of cycles in nature. And these cycles are orchestrated by these three doshas. So Vata, Pitta, and Kapha all work together to orchestrate and to modulate these laws of natures. And so understanding the characteristics and qualities associated with each of these three doshas is actually what allows us to understand the cycles of nature and how we can align our behavior and our daily routine with them. And one of the doshas that's really important to discuss is Vata dosha. And in Ayurveda, Vata dosha is considered the king dosha because of how important it is. Vata is a dosha that orchestrates all the intelligence related to communication in the universe and within our physiology. It has to do with movement as well as transportation. So there's a lot of important functions in the universe as well as in our own bodies that are orchestrated by this Vata dosha. And you may be wondering, what is Vata? What are the characteristics or qualities associated with this dosha? Well, that has a lot to do with the five elements. So in Ayurveda, as a science, it recognizes that matter, all of the physical universe, and this also impacts the quality of our minds, but the physical universe is all made up of a combination of the five elements. And those five elements in Ayurveda are space, right? The space to actually hold matter, air to fill up that space, fire, which is the element that allows for heat and transformation, water, which is the element of fluidity and is a conduit for energy and is also the essence of life. Without water, there is no life. And then earth. Earth is the fifth element, which is the hardest, most stable element that provides structure for the universe and for our physical body. And so understanding the five elements allows us to understand the doshas, because each of the three doshas are also made up of a combination of the five elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. However, each of the three doshas are different proportions of the five elements. And each dosha, according to Ayurveda, are primarily made up of two of the five elements. So, for example, Vata dosha is primarily space and air. While it does have little elements of fire, water, and earth, the primary characteristics and attributes of Vata dosha are air and space. And so, because of that, the qualities associated with Vata are the qualities associated with air and space. And what kind of qualities do we associate with air and space? Well, it's very subtle, it's very minute, it's very ethereal, it's light, it's cold. It's recognized as cold, right? Fire is the only element of the five elements that actually has that quality of heat. So it's cold, it's rough, it's brittle. So when you think of air moving through space, it's very quick, it's very fast, it's cold, it's brittle, it can be rough, especially when the wind is blowing heavily. And so these qualities actually impact all of the qualities in our physiology. And so why I'm bringing this up is because Vata dosha is very important when we talk about daily routine. Because Vata is primarily air and space, if you think about it, air and space is very erratic. It's not grounded because it can just go here and there and change quickly and be all over the place. And so if you ever notice someone who is kind of spacey, erratic, they talk fast, they get easily distracted, they tend to worry or have anxiety or yeah, just be all over the place. That is someone who is being very heavily influenced by Vata, whether that's in their nature or whether they're experiencing some kind of imbalance. And so we can see the effect of Vata dosha in nature and in our personalities and in our behavior based off of the quality of our behavior. And so, because of that, having a daily routine is actually one of the most important things in Ayurveda to balance Vata dosha. Because Vata dosha is so ungrounded, it is so erratic, quick moving, subtle, and minute. Having a daily routine actually allows us to anchor ourselves in our daily experience, and it helps to settle the mind because it's alleviating the task of having to figure out what we do next. Having a daily routine that's rooted into our behavior allows us to flow through our day less stressed and less anxious because subconsciously we're alleviating that mental task of figuring out what we need to do. Having a daily routine also calms our nervous system, right? Because Vata dosha is actually very important with the nervous system. When we think about the nervous system and the functions of the nervous system, it's important with regulating communication, transportation, and movement, right? It orchestrates all those functions in our body, and that is done with the help of Vata dosha. And so when we have a daily routine that grounds us in our experience, we actually balance that Vata dosha and allow ourselves the experience of reduced stress and reduced strain throughout our day. And pranayama, breathing techniques, like we talked in our last video about, are just one technique, one way that we can root ourselves, ground ourselves to balance the doshas, to balance Vata dosha in particular, and to experience more peace and more calm in our lives. And when we are in a state that's grounded, that's calm and settled, we can elevate our awareness, we can develop our consciousness more effectively. And so hopefully that makes sense. Of course, there is so much more I could go into about the three doshas and about Vata dosha in particular, because it is so important in health. But I wanted to highlight and emphasize the importance of daily routine and how that helps to actually balance the doshas and balance our health. Because in Ayurveda, it recognizes that when these three doshas are balanced and working together harmoniously, we experience good health, mentally and physically. However, when the three doshas are not balanced, when they're in disharmony with each other, we experience unhealthy disease, dis-ease. So that can be stress, that can be physical symptoms, that can be mental strain, emotional turmoil, all kinds of different symptoms that indicate imbalances with the three doshas. And so if we balance Vata dosha, we have a good shot of balancing all three doshas because, again, Vata dosha is considered the king dosha in Ayurveda. And daily routine is one of the most important ways to balance that Vata dosha. Um, Also, an important part of our daily routine is what we eat and how we eat. Not only is it important to consider what we're eating, but how we're eating. And that has a lot to do with Vata dosha too. But the other two doshas are also really important with proper digestion. Ayurveda recognizes that digestion is one of the most important realms of health because the ability to actually ingest and assimilate the food that we eat turns into our tissues and essentially the quality of our body and the quality of our mind. And as we talked about in our last video, the quality of our body and the quality of our mind has a huge impact in the quality of our intelligence and our ability to cultivate awareness and to develop consciousness. And so, eating properly at the proper times and eating the appropriate food for our body is essential for cultivating a daily routine that serves us on the spiritual path. And so, on our daily routine sheet that was provided for you, there is a section dietary regimen and seasonal considerations, because not only are we considering the daily cycle that impacts our digestion and the quality of how we assimilate the food into our system, but the seasons actually influence our digestion and our quality of health. And so in Ayurveda, it's recommended that a light breakfast be eaten after our morning routine, after our morning practices around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. It's generally recommended to have a light breakfast. So things like oatmeal and toast, stewed apples are really great options for our morning meal. That light breakfast also allows our digestion to jumpstart so that by noon, by 1 o'clock, we're ready for our main meal, which in Ayurveda, we recognize that when the sun is highest in the sky, our digestion is strongest because the fire element is most associated with our digestion. And so the sun, being a ball of fire, it has a direct relationship. It's that nature being us and we are nature relationship. We recognize that when the sun is highest in the sky, our digestion is strongest. So that's when we should have our main meal. So our largest meal would be around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and then giving yourself sufficient time between meals is really important. So dinner is usually by 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, which tends to be lighter. Nice soups are recommended, stews, vegetables, things like that. And a vegetarian meal is encouraged, but if you are someone who eats meat, um, it is recommended that maybe not every meal uh, be a meat-centered meal. So if you do eat meat, I'm not discouraging you from doing so, but I would encourage you to have it at lunchtime when your digestion is strongest. Because meat, aside from any other considerations, is very heavy and very difficult for the digestive system to fully process. And so if you eat your meat or protein during the lunch hour, then you have the best chance of actually assimilating the full nutritive value of that meal. And so it's also recommended that we eat seasonally, right? So during the summer, sweet mangoes, juicy citruses, and fruits like that are recommended because nature is intelligent and it knows what is appropriate for us at that time. That's why those foods are readily available in nature. And during the winter months, foods that are more unctuous and heavy are recommended, like root vegetables. Potatoes are really great. Soups, especially that are warm and nourishing with healthy oils like olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, coconut oil. Those are all really great oils to include in our cooking, especially in the wintertime. In the spring, we want to eat light, warm meals as well. And in the summer, we want to avoid things that could aggravate the hottest time of the year. So If you like spicy food, maybe lay off the spicy food and favor things that are more sweet and nourishing. And generally speaking, we want to avoid dry processed foods. Dry is one of the qualities of vata, and so we want to balance the dryness that is the natural tendency of vata with more unctuousness, more oily, or more hydrating foods. And so that's why soups and things like that and healthy oils are recommended as part of our seasonal routine. And there's a lot more we could talk about in terms of diet and our Dinacharya. But the main point here is to focus on what we're eating, but also how we're eating. So giving ourselves enough time to actually enjoy our meal, taste the food, chew consciously, and to sit afterwards allows the digestive system to function properly. In our society, we tend to go, 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 and leave no time for actually resting after a meal, especially if we work full time and we're eating at the job or eating in our car. It's not allowing the body to fully gain the full value of the food. And so, eating consciously means making the time to prioritize your eating schedule and working around whatever obligations that you have as mindfully as you can. So I hope that this gives you just a little inspiration to look into how your diet, the way that you eat, and what you're eating is impacting your quality of life, and what can you do to actually improve that realm of your health and of your life. And today I will conclude our video with another pranayama technique. This one is called Ujjayi breath or ocean breath, which is very similar to the three-part breath, the yogic breath that we talked about in our last video. But this one involves a gentle constriction of the throat so that when you exhale as well as inhale, you'll hear the sound that some people say sounds like an ocean. So Ujjayi breath translates to ocean breath. But I've also heard people say that it sounds like the Darth Vader breath. So the idea here is breathing in through the nose, gently constricting the throat so that as you breathe out, you hear a sound that like is either an ocean breeze or like a Darth Vader. And you breathe in, maybe gently constricting the throat, hearing that same rush. Exhaling and making that sound with a gentle constriction of the throat. And it's very similar to the three-part breath. You want to breathe into your abdomen, breathe into the chest and rib cage, letting everything expand as you constrict the throat, and then gently exhale, constricting the throat as you relax at the bottom. And it will take practice at first to hear that sound, but that sound actually helps stimulate the vagus nerve, which stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the nervous system, activates our rest and digest state, which is a state that is most conducive for spiritual growth and developing consciousness. So I hope that you'll spend a few minutes today practicing that ocean breath, Ujjayi breath, and perhaps journaling about your experience or about any of the information I shared with you today. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you for day 3.